folks, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Natasha and I do book things here. Today's video is going to be my monthly wrap up for the month of April. I know this is going up a little bit late, but I've had some personal life, I guess, issues, stress, just a lot of stuff going on. I'm okay. Also, if you hear any like wind blowing, I have to open this window. It's 1,000 degrees in this room. It went from being cold to 1,000 degrees in like 2 days. So, but no, I'm doing okay. Just my personal life is kind of like real crazy. Dealing with some like health issues, not mine, but other people's. And without getting too much into it, it's just a stressful time. And now there's an airplane. So yeah, I've just been dealing with a lot of stress. I have my tattoo coming up soon, taking some time off work, BookCon, BA, all that stuff at the end of the month, and then also trying to navigate what this sort of health stuff is going to mean for my life right now. Anyway, today I'm going to talk to you guys about all the books that I read in April, give you guys my ratings and all that jazz. So let's get into the monthly stats. So in total I read 10 books in the month of April, and that's pretty average, I find. I know that May I have not read one book and it's like the 8th. So that's gonna be great, but you know, life hits you sometimes, right? My total star rating for the month is a 3.8. However, I didn't have any 5-star books this month. I had one 1.5 star, one 3.5 star, 6 4 stars, and 2 4.5. So nothing that was really perfect, but everything I just kind of overall enjoyed for the most part. I read 3,256 words, which is about 108 words a day. 6 adult, 4 YA. And then here's where it gets fun, is my genres. This month maybe put me in a reading slump because these were my genres, and you guys should know my sort of like typical genres. So I read a historical, a fantasy, a horror, a graphic novel, a fantasy, a fantasy, a fantasy, a fantasy, a contemporary, and an other being a manga. So the fact that I have a historical and 5 fantasies in there speaks for itself. My years go 2019, and then they kind of jump around. So 2017, my oldest being 1983, which was my Stephen King for the month, 2016, 15, 13, 18, 17, and then a 2002. So would have liked to have read more newer releases, didn't get around to it. So yeah, definitely an interesting month. Fantasy-a-thon. Read a lot more fantasy things. Did definitely get slumpy in there though, like for sure. I'll talk to you guys a little bit more about that when I get into the books, but I'm gonna start with my lowest rating, go all the way to the top. There's like 6 4 stars in here, so anyway. For the first book that I read, and I rated a 1.5, which is just really below average. I just did not like this. Didn't feel comfortable rating it a 1 because it is a local author to me. So that was The Discovery of Flight by Susan Glickman. She was really nice when I met her, and she signed my book at an event. But this, I don't know, I had issues with this. It follows a 16-year-old who has cerebral palsy, and she's writing a novel, fantasy novel, so it kind of switches between these two perspectives. It's also told from her sister's diary entries, and at no point when reading this did I not realize that this is like not written by, you know what I mean, that age group. It is definitely written like an older woman wrote this, is what I think a teenager sounds like, and it was just off. It was weird. I didn't care for it. I had some issues with the writing, and then to be honest, I kind of just skimmed the last like 100 pages. What I thought was going to happen in the book happened, and I didn't really care. Yeah, so I ended up just giving this a 1.5. Did not care for it that much. So from there it jumps to like 3.5 stars, and then all my 4s. So I liked all of these books from here on. The one fantasy book that I was really excited to get my hands on and try out was Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. This is a story, the beginning of, I believe, a 4-book series. What's that called? It's a trilogy. What's 4? I think there's 4 books now, or there could just be 3. I'm not certain. So this is an adult fantasy series that follows Senlin as he and his new wife go to this like Tower of Babel basically, and they are like certain promises on each levels, and they're going to kind of like get away from their life and whatever. And then on the journey there and kind of like into the tower, he loses his wife, and she kind of is just gone, and he spends the rest of the book kind of searching for her. And this, I'm gonna have to get the second book and continue the series, because this didn't give me any like resolution, and I'm like, ugh, I want to read more and know kind of like what happened. So it's definitely still on the search by the end of the book, just know that. But the journey along the way was really cool. I did hit like a personal issue with this though that I do want to mention. When I'm reading fantasy books, my big fear is that I'm not able to sort of like picture the world, and I could a little bit for this, but then there was that point where it just sort of lost me, where it just felt like I was just reading words just to read words, where I wasn't really like immersed into the story, if that makes any sense. So it was a bit hard for me to relate to this in any way, and there were certain things that definitely were just a little bit lost. But that's okay, because I know that I'm not like a high fantasy or like even really like a dense fantasy reader, and so I'm okay going to like a wiki page and like reading what the book is actually happening. I did that for a Stephen King one a while ago, where I was like, I don't know what's happening, I need to figure this out while I'm reading it, so I'm not like just lost. I did enjoy the world from what like I could get, and I ended up giving it a 3.5. Alright, so let's get into 4-star books, because that's where the meat of this video is. I really need to sort of like analyze my star rating system. I watched Lala's video and now I'm like, do I ever want to rate any book ever again? Anyway, the first one that I have here is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I definitely read this and listened to the audiobook at the same time, and I'll be honest, I really truly think that the audiobook helped this a lot, and I have kind of, I guess, a strong opinion about this, in that I really truly believe that this book was meant for an audiobook and not the physical format. Although there are people that said that they really like the physical format, that's awesome. I just don't think that I would have liked it as much if I read it in the way that it's sort of broken down. Also, the audiobook is just produced amazingly, and it's kind of a work of art in its own. I loved all the voices, I liked all the characters, I liked the story, and yeah, you can definitely picture certain people as these characters. At no point did it ever feel like it was like a fake band. Like, again, Taylor Jenkins Reid can write those characters where they feel like real people. Evelyn Hugo felt like a real, like, old-timey Hollywood person. Daisy Jones and the Six felt like a real band, and I like being sort of, you know, I like being in that world where it feels like these are actual characters, which is really cool. I really truly think that this book should be sold with an audiobook. Like, in a way that says, hey, see this little star or circle? I won an award, but also listen to the audiobook. That should be like on this book. My personal opinion. I quite enjoyed this. This follows a fictional band in the 70s, I believe like late 60s, 70s, and sort of their like rise to success and sort of downfall and everything that goes from there. A lot of like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, you know. Here's another fantasy, which is Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Shauna Maguire. This is book 2 in the Wayward Children series, and I like this. This is, yeah, like this. This is the little sort of bite of fantasy that I like, that is like easy for me, that I just enjoyed. The story was easy to follow. I like this world, and it makes me very excited to continue the series and go into like all the other little characters that we met in like book 1 and go into their worlds. Liked it a lot. I don't really want to say too much about this because it is such a short book, it's hard to describe, but it does follow these two sisters. One is more like princessy and one is more tomboy, like that sort of, you know, trope, I guess. But then they go down the staircase into this other world, and it talks about what that means for them. It's just like a nice little snippet of like a fantasy book, and like, I don't know, I'm just really excited to continue with the rest of them because they're short, they're cute, they're like easy, you can read it in like a day. and it's a nice little book. I like it a lot. So next fantasy book that I have here I really enjoyed and made me realize that I like a certain thing about fantasy, which is really exciting for me when I read a genre that I don't typically read and then I find something that I really like. That is The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black. Story about Hazel and her brother Ben, and they live in this town where there is like a boy in a glass box in the forest, and it follows fairies or fae living amongst humans in this sort of like agreement that they have. And suddenly one day the boy is like out of this glass case, and they follow this like journey of Hazel and her brother, and I like this a lot. Hey. As I was saying about this, it has to do with fae, and I realized that like if there's any other books that are like this, I would like to read them. This was my kind of fantasy that I'm looking for, like whimsy, forest-based, that kind of thing. I really like that. I really like witches, and I think I really like fairies, and I really like earthy fantasy. Is that a thing? I don't know. Julie, help me. Whimsical, whimsy fantasy. That's, anyway, that I really like this. I thought it was delightful. I liked it. It's hard because it's like it's hard for me to base it off of like anything else that I've read because I haven't read anything like it. So I'm like, this is about fairies. I like it. Also, guys, I'll be honest, my brain, even as I'm filming this video, my brain is just not here. I'm so stressed out that like, forgive me that this video is a friggin' hot mess, and I'm kind of like cutting it off like halfway through just to let you know like my brain is not entirely here. Like, it happens. And today is one of those days. Anyway, next fantasy book that I liked is, ooh, I like the writing of this so much actually. Like, I really should, I think, move this up to a 4.5 because I liked it that much, but it was weird. That is All the Crooked Saints by myeyeshadowisod. This, I loved this. The writing style in this, like if her writing in all of her other books is like this one, please, for the love of God, let me know, because this I just enjoyed so much. It's very hard for me to describe what this book is. There is, I believe, Latin influences in this, but it follows these people who live in this place where they can perform miracles, and people go there to get a miracle, but then they're sort of like afflicted with what that means and what that costs. It's one of the weirder books I've ever read, which is, I'm not doing a great job of like describing it, but the writing and the characters and the weirdness of it all, and the writing mostly, is just something that I didn't know I needed. And it was just great. Please, Goodreads, what this book is somewhat about. Other than that, I don't even know how to describe it. There's like, you know, at one point there's a girl who has rain constantly falling on her, and there's a giant 40-foot tall man, and there's a boy who is now blind in the desert, and there's this radio station that sends out, listen, there's a lot of things happening in this book. It's very confusing, but like in like the most delightful way. Love this. So, okay, yeah. Let's just move on. Let's move on. It was great. I don't know how to describe fantasy books. I'm like, oh, it's fucking fantastical. Next one here is the one contemporary that I read this month, and this is a survivor story. I didn't realize that it was like a survivalist story, which I really enjoy. Big fan of Naked and Afraid. Love that show. I feel like I'm naked and afraid at least once a day. But, I love that show. And this is a map for Rekt Girls by Jessica Taylor, and this book follows two sisters who sort of met this guy, ended up on a boat, and then now they are stranded on this island, and it talks about their relationships, their past, their present on the island, and relationships and whatnot. There are things in here that were like realistic. I would imagine realistic to being on a deserted island, at least to me, I think. And then just, I don't know, just something about this I thoroughly enjoyed. Really enjoyed it. And the story of like how long they were on there, like I expecting it to be like a couple days, and ended up being like, you know, a significant period of time, which is really cool. And just sort of how they survived and like the trials and tribulations on the island. If you're looking for like a desert island story but also like a good bit of drama in there, this is good. And then the last 4-star book before I get into my 4.5s was another work by Junji Ito. This is, oh god, I didn't look it up how to pronounce this. I don't know. I'm an idiot. I didn't look it up beforehand. Normally I do. My apologies. It's this book. So this book, as usual, Junji Ito's manga, horror manga especially, has some like really disturbing imagery, trigger warnings for suicide in this, and also some of just the most messed up stuff you'll ever see. However, I will say that this made me laugh so hard. I don't want to show you guys any images, but I'll show you just this one. More or less in this book there is this like rotten smell coming from like this seaside town, and slowly but surely fish come out of the ocean with these like mechanic legs that looks like, well, okay, well, like these ones. Also, this is the thing that happens, which I'm like, okay. It starts off with small fish, and so when it just moves on to a great white shark with legs, I laugh so hard. And as much as this is a horror manga, like I'm literally debating getting a great white shark with legs tattooed on my actual body, because the amount of laughter that came out of me the second I saw this was too much. It felt just like a B movie. Like I'm actually like reading and looking at the images, and then it was like flip the next page, oh, and it's a B movie. But it ends up being a little bit more horrific than that, and there's some like messed up stuff in this. As always, messed up. You want some like crazy stuff that you'll never get out of your head ever again? Anything by Junji Ito is like messed up. This one was a lot of fun. It talks a little bit like about the environment and like influence of like military, that kind of thing. Yeah, it was weird. Listen, I just really like it because artwork is just unlike anything I've ever seen. Like, you guys have any other horror manga recommendations for me that's in the same sort of realm as this? I feel like he is the like Stephen King of horror manga, you know, like nothing really parallels Stephen King, nothing really parallels Junji Ito. Like I just feel like that's kind of the vibe. But if you have any other horror manga recommendations, please leave them down below. I would like them. And then lastly, the 2 4.5-star books I have here. One is my Stephen King read for the month. That is Pet Sematary. This was a reread for me. However, I read this and rated it a 3 based on what I thought I liked about it when I read it when I was 13. My rating has since jumped up from a 3 to a 4.5. I feel like with the movie now being released, which I still have not seen, we'll get into that, but I feel like with the new movie being released, a lot of people know what this is about or assume they know what this is about. So this follows Dr. Lewis Creed, who moves his wife and his 2 kids to this sort of like, you know, rolling hill little like peaceful place in Maine, and except they live across from this really busy road, and it's sort of like a dangerous road, and there's a lot of like animals that get killed near this road. Also, he has this neighbor across the street named Judd, who, by the way, thank you John Lithgow for playing that character. Even though I haven't seen the movie, it's who I pictured the entire time while I read this book. Like, I can't get his face out of this character now, and I haven't even seen the movie. Just seeing the clips of the movie is exactly who I pictured in this book. Anyway, nearby there is this pet cemetery, and then from there it's like if anything that is buried there doesn't really stay dead. And it plays with that and what happens when they come back. It's great. It's like a, you know, it's like a psychological horror, sort of like a little bit paranormally kind of vibe. This I just feel like is another really good Stephen King work. It's just, the characters are great, like the character development, the town, like the cemetery. It's just, he can just paint a world in my mind like flawlessly, honestly. And then with the help of like the movie images that came out so recently, like I pictured everything in this book. I just enjoyed it. I like this sort of like, I don't know, how messed up everything was, and the actual like horror characters in this, great. The cat, great. It's Pet Sematary. What more do you want me to say? I gave it a 4.5. I don't know why not a 5. I had some sort of issue with it. I forget what it was now, I'll be honest. But it's just not my most favorite Stephen King, I think. It's not, I don't know, it's still really, really good. Like 4.5, like I loved it. but there's just something missing and I don't know what that is. And then the last book that I read in the month that I rated a 4.5 is continuing in the Saga series. This is Saga Volume 6. By this point, you're so deep in the story. There's a lot of things happening. As always, the artwork is amazing. The characters are amazing. There's this one character who I just love. I love so much. I just love this character. This lady right here is like one of my favorites. She just makes me laugh. Oh, there's some wee-wees and some pee-pees in this. I forgot about that. God, this series, again, like, listen, like, you ever just like look at a fantasy series or like a graphic novel and you go, like, how does your mind work getting these images out and creating this story? Especially Saga. If you guys have not read Saga, just, I don't know, pick up volume 1, look at the artwork, and if that doesn't hook you in, like, just continue. Like, just flip through some, because they're great. I'm at 6. There's 9 in the series. I can't tell you anything that happens in this because it's just a massive spoiler for everything. But I thoroughly enjoyed them. I keep enjoying them. Pretty much rating them anywhere from a 4 to a 5, depending on like the level of sort of drama that happens in like that issue. This one was a 4.5. Just loved it. So yeah, that is all the books that I read in the month of April. Will I read books in May? It has yet to be seen, folks. I don't know. I freaking hope so. I am a host of a readathon and I don't know if I'm gonna read books. It's great. I'm stressed. Yeah, I hope everyone is doing better than I am. I hope everyone is just, you know, taking it easy, chilling, and finding relaxation somewhere. That's all I can hope for people. And yeah, until my next video, I will talk to you guys soon. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree, disagree on any of these ratings. Throughout the video, I asked for suggestions. Please leave me any of those. Horror manga, any more Maggie Stiefvater's work, if the writing is similar to All the Crooked Saints, I'd love. Any sort of like fae, forest, whimsical based fantasy, leave it down below. I would like recommendations. I will talk to all you guys soon. Bye!